Hello and a very warm welcome to the Total Saints podcast. I'm Martin Starke, and each week I'm joined by our marvellous panel of guests to discuss all the action from the last 7 days supporting Southampton Football Club. Now, as every week, we're streaming this episode of TSP Live on our Facebook and on our Twitter pages, and you'll also find it on our official YouTube channel. So if you're watching live on Facebook or YouTube, you can get involved in the conversation using the comments section. Coming up this week on what could potentially be the happiest pod of the season, reaction to two incredible Saints performances, a first win at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium and a hard-earned point at Old Trafford. Plus, this week, could Ralph Hassenhuttl been taking an early retirement? And we'll preview the game against Everton at St Mary's on Saturday. So first of all, let me introduce you to our regular TSP guests who are waiting patiently on your screens. Steve Grant is the owner of SaintsWeb, which is the independent Southampton FC website. How's your week been, Steve? I saw a picture of you guys in Dubai watching the game yesterday. Looked like a great atmosphere and a good turnout.
Yeah, excellent turnout. I think the early kickoff over here always helps. 4:30 kickoff on Saturday afternoon is kind of perfect for everybody. It means you're not, if you've got family commitments and stuff, you can not worry too much about sort of disrupting any plans you might have. So yeah, good, excellent turnout. We had about 20 of us down there in the end. So yeah, it's excellent. Yeah, it's been a very good week. It was certainly a surprise week in terms of results. I think performance-wise, I don't think it was necessarily too far away from what we've come to expect in these sort of games. But actually, for once, we kind of took advantage of the opposition giving us a sniff. Whereas in the past, I mean, that Spurs Cup game a couple of years ago was a prime example where we absolutely battered them and then still managed to find a miraculous way to lose. Whereas this time we've obviously been the ones turning it around late. But I mean, let's be honest, that game Wednesday we should have been 5 up at half time and the game done and dusted.
Yeah, could have been.
But yeah, no, it's been excellent.
Lots of positives. Also with us is Glen de la Cour, who's the writer of League One -10. That's the weekly Saints blog. Have you enjoyed the games this week, Glen?
Yeah, it's been great. I was waiting for you to ask me what I've been doing this week. I was just going to.
Have you made up some stuff?
No, I was going to give you 45 seconds of silence and me going, nah, nothing really.
Nothing.
But you've learnt your lessons and you've actually asked me something useful. Yeah, both games were incredibly enjoyable. I loved the Tottenham game. It was brilliant. It was frustrating first half because, as Steve said, should have been out of sight. Yesterday was really enjoyable as well. Didn't expect it because I thought we'd done our one good performance for the week. So I was kind of, by the time that game came around, I was kind of expecting a fairly sort of routine 2-0 to United sort of thing. But we were excellent again. The only criticism I've got of us is that we didn't quite work the goalkeeper enough when we had chances to do so. So we could have won, but that would have been very greedy. We equally could have lost, but I thoroughly enjoyed the game and delighted to get to the end of it with a point.
And also with us is Dan Sheldon, who's the Athletics dedicated Saints reporter. Busy week for you, Dan. Are you excited for the Super Bowl later? Have you got the Red Bull? Are you going to be up all night?
No, I'm already tired, to be honest. I'm flagging already that this week's taking it out of me. But no, I will stay up and I will watch it.
Good. The biggest hello and thank you, of course, is reserved to all our patrons, wherever you're listening or watching this week. Welcome to episode 186 of the Total Saints podcast. Glenn, let's start with you this week, shall we? Was a point each a fair result at Old Trafford?
Yeah, I think so. Just about. I think Ralph Hassenhuttl summed it up in that they probably shaded the first half and we shaded the second half. I was waiting for Maguire's header at the end to end up in the net, and and feel like we'd been done again in the last minute. But I think, overall, a point was a fair result. I do feel, as I said earlier, with just a little bit more belief and a little bit more composure when we got sort of near their goal. I do feel like we could have actually won it. But yeah, as I've already said, that would have been greedy. You can't be anything other than delighted with a point at Old Trafford, regardless of how sort of like badly they're playing. They've still got players who they've signed for 70, 80 million quid. I mean, I was just thinking about this. You put it into context. They signed Luke Shaw from us 7-8 years ago for 30 million quid. That's still 10 million more than we've paid for anybody 8 years later. And Jadon Sancho got their goal. He cost a bit of money, and we've competed with them throughout, and it's an object lesson that a team playing as a team can compete with 11 individuals. I also thought if you try to pick a combined 11 with Saints and Man United compared to a few years ago, we'd have had maybe one, maybe two players in it. Whereas I think you could make an argument now that we'd have 6 or 7 in there. The way that game was looking yesterday. So I just thought we were excellent throughout. We survived the shout out to Jack Stevens. I thought he was tremendous when he came on, because that could have been an area where it went wrong, bringing a new player in at half time, but he got up to the pace of the game pretty quickly. And so overall a totally deserved point. Thoroughly enjoyed the game, and it's always nice to see United losing their rag a little bit. I mean, the booking count was 4-0, which is unbelievable for a game up there, for them to get 4 bookings and us to get none. And the only thing I'd criticise the referee for is that he wasn't harsh enough with the cards. And we're probably going to come on to the Bruno Fernandes giving the worst audition for being a boxer you've ever seen in your life. But I think the referee was let down by VAR a little bit there. Stuart Atwell, we've had him up there before, and he's been horrendous. And he is a bit of a weak referee, but I would have taken his performance yesterday, because basically he got the majority of the decisions right, even if he didn't. It was a little bit lenient with the cards, I thought. But overall, happy days, great result.
That's a great pub conversation for later in the week as well. A Saints Man United combined 11. Be an interesting debate. Steve, you must have enjoyed this one. What did you make of it all?
Yeah, we were good for the most part. For me, it was only really a a sort of 20-minute spell, kind of either side of their goal, where I thought we looked like we're not at this. And they were kind of running through us and creating pretty good chances. I mean, to be honest, Ronaldo should have scored that early chance. He shouldn't have given Perraud the opportunity to clear it off the line. And Forster made a good save as well, didn't he? From Ronaldo, I think, or was it from Sancho? I can't remember now. And then obviously they got the goal, and all those are in the first 20 minutes. But at the same time, we tested them a couple of times. Obviously, Adams slipped 4 yards from goal, which is unfortunate. And I think the rebound from that, I think, was the only time that Harry Maguire did anything useful as a defender, getting the block on Ward-Prowse's follow-up. But I think at the end of the day, we've grown into that game, because I think towards half time we just realised that actually this lot aren't to be feared, even at the Theatre of Dreams, as it's so called. I mean, to be honest, for United players at the moment, it's a theatre of dullness, because they're not getting an awful lot of backing from the crowd. Despite, I mean, I always find the whole sort of stereotype of, you go to the big grounds and there's no noise. Old Trafford's just really inconsistent, I find, because one year we'll go up there and it will be dead as a dormouse. It'll be deathly silent for 90 minutes, and they'll still win a routine sort of 2-0 win. Other years we'll go up there and there won't be anything in the game, but weirdly there'll be a really good atmosphere. So there's no real rhyme or reason behind it. There doesn't seem to be any logic there. But I mean, from what I could hear of it, it seemed the atmosphere was kind of all right, but it was kind of one of those sort of antagonistic, tense atmospheres, which I don't think for a home team, I don't think that ever helps. I mean, if anybody watched the Leicester game just now, the first half of that was kind of prime example. Like Leicester defenders kind of passing it around with very little confidence, and the fans already getting on their backs like 10 minutes into the game. Just doesn't never helps anybody. And I think we kind of picked up on that just before half time and realised, yeah, we can get into these. And yeah, I mean, we hit them hard right at the start of the second half. And I mean, to be honest, the chances we created in the second half, David De Gea should be coming out. We either score more goals or David De Gea should end as man of the match. But unfortunately, we've not put enough shots on target, which is obviously a complete contrast to what we did on Wednesday, where we got 10 on target and Lloris was man of the match despite being on the losing side. So yeah, good performance, good result, but also still ever so slightly frustrating, I'd say.
That's a sign of how far we've come, isn't it? Dan, you were there yesterday. Was that a brave performance from Southampton, do you think?
I thought it was. I didn't. It was never going to be as good as the performance on Wednesday night, simply because how much energy they put into that game at Tottenham, the intensity of it, and it went right until the end. And Ralph said it best after the United game, actually, that for the first 40, 45 minutes, his players looked leggy. They looked tired. Man United were finding space in behind. Steve said they wasted a couple of chances. They went ahead, and you kind of thought when that happened, right, okay, Saints look in trouble here. They're probably going to lose this 2 or 3-0. But in the grand scheme of things, they've had a brilliant week. Anyone can come to United and lose, given the quality of players they have. They're a terrible team, but they have got individual quality on the pitch. And then in the second half, they just came out a completely different team. It seemed like they'd shaken off any kind of lactic acid that had built up, and they had chances to win that game. I remember Brozier when he went through, and at first I thought, who's he trying to cross that ball to? And then it turns out it was just a terrible shot. He's tried to kind of like poke it with the outside of his boot into the far corner, but just completely mishit it. And it ended up looking like more like a cross. But I think that just shows how far. It either shows how far Southampton have come or how far Man United have fallen. It's probably 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, that they went there. They weren't at their best, and they still could have won that game. But I think Ralph would have snapped your hand off for a point before the game.
Yeah, he seemed really happy. Glen, a word on those, the front two, Adams and Brozier. Probably could have had a few more. Good partnership, but good individually as well. They seem to be bringing out the best of each other and enhancing each other's game.
Well, I think we said a few weeks ago that they'd only sort of played together maybe once in the first part of the season, and to me, it looked like a partnership that could go places, and it certainly is. It is getting better all the time. Che Adams is on a little run at the moment where, he started scoring goals again. Brozier is just a handful. When he decides, it's almost like he needs to decide to get involved sometimes. He didn't. I mean, Maguire was towing a caravan all game, wasn't he? I mean, he was hopeless. And when Brozier sort of went that side and was playing against Maguire and Shaw, I mean, Shaw was having another one of those games where he just couldn't be bothered to defend half the time, couldn't be bothered to run. So I would have liked, Brozier to have gone over there a little bit more and caused them a few more problems. But when he got on the ball, he's very difficult to stop. If you're not that quick, he is very, very difficult to stop. He's very quick for such a big guy, and he needs to get a little bit more composure with his finishing. But I think the two of them, if we can keep those two fit and they carry on playing as they are, we're never going to be out of games. We're always going to have the potential to score goals with those two there. And it's not just those two. The spine of the team to me now looks excellent with the two in midfield, Salisu at the back, and the goalkeeper playing well. It's a very good sort of spine of the team. And just to expand it slightly further, I love the look of our starting lineup. The last two games, that's our best starting lineup. Elyounoussi and Armstrong playing on the wings, excellent. But come back to the forwards. I'm really looking forward to seeing how they how they develop the partnership. I love the fact that Che Adams seemed to be playing slightly deeper out of the two, and the amount of work that guy did back in his own half. Because the only time I felt like United were going to score was on the break. I didn't feel they were ever going to pick their way through us. They just didn't look good enough to do that. And a couple of times we lost the ball on the edge of their penalty area, as you do. And then you see Che Adams turning up at right back to clear the ball, and you just think that says something. The desire from that guy to get back in and help the team. But I thought that the pair of them were a right handful. But the issue with Brozier, of course, is that everyone's noticing now. So I'm almost happy when he comes off and he hasn't scored.
We did say, didn't we, previously, it's like another £1 million for every time he's going to bang in a goal.
Yeah. But, it is what it is. We know what the situation is, and that'll be a conversation for the summer. But for the rest of this season, which I think is all we can really look at for now, I'm really looking forward to seeing how those two carry on.
A couple of VAR incidents. Some they should have looked at, some they didn't. Steve, let's talk about that Brozier Maguire, the penalty when he stamped on his leg. If he goes down, is that a penalty, do you think?
I think it's I think the shove is probably a foul, and I think it's one that you probably get elsewhere on the pitch. But referees and fans as well and players seem to take this approach as well, that you need to there needs to be a kind of higher burden of proof in the penalty area, which there's nothing like that in the laws. But realistically, let's face it, you're not going to Old Trafford and getting that in the 89th minute, are you, to win the game? And I don't think it was that much of a mistake from the referee that's ever going to be overturned. I think if he gives it straight up, then you're probably not pulling it back. But having not given it, I don't think VAR's overruling that at all.
We always come to you on these incidents, Dan, just to kind of have the casting vote, if you like. Do you think it was right yesterday? Nothing in it, just Maguire getting his feet in the way?
Yeah, I concur with exactly what Steve just said. I don't think I could add anything else. I think if he gives it, they're not overturning it, but they're not going to, if he doesn't give it, there's no way they're going to pull that back and give it. It really was just one of those.
And it was an interesting battle in midfield, Glen, with Bruno Fernandes throwing his fake punches around at James Ward-Prowse. What was all that about? He was definitely rattled.
Well, Fernandes, he seems to think he runs the club and he runs the refereeing and he owns everything, and he throws his arms around all game. He's a horrible player, I would imagine, if you're on his team sometimes, because he just seems to be the sort of guy who is always moaning about everything. And that incident with Ward-Prowse was a real nothing. Did someone have a throw in or something?
Southampton throw in.
We had a throw on the halfway line. Yeah,
and he was just trying to sort of get to a space, and Prowse stood in front of him, and then a bit of wrestling goes on, and then he quite clearly throws a punch. Now it's unbelievable that in these days of VAR, the guys at Stockley Park are not going, there might be something you might want to have a look at here. It's unreal that he's got away with it. The referee can't have seen it, because any referee who sees someone throw a punch or a slap or whatever is going to do something about it. So, I don't know if they look at things retrospectively now in the days of VAR and say, hang on, we've all missed something here. And it's obviously of no use to us if he gets a retrospective ban, but he deserves it. And it was a strange old thing. Fernandes, he showed what he can do in the first half. That ball that set up the goal where he took Salisu out of the play, with that ball to Rashford, that's a brilliant ball, and that's what he's good at. But it was interesting to see Paul Scholes on BT Sport afterwards highlighting the fact
he wasn't happy, was he, Paul Scholes?
No, he just said he doesn't hold his position, and that's part of the problem that United have got. But that's their problem. Don't care about that. But it's been good that I wouldn't say we've targeted him, but we've wound him up in both games this season. It was Jack Stevens in the home game, and obviously it was Prowse in this game. But I just think Prowse was closest to him, at the time he seemed to be getting more and more het up as the game went on. But it's, you know, we've criticised us for being too nice in the past, and if you've got a player on the other team that's easy to wind up, then, you know, go and do it. It's part of the game. And
just a word on Jack Stephens, Dan. I know we've talked about him quite a bit in the past, but coming on at half time, a change that you were probably a little bit nervous. I think we were all like, oh gosh, this could go either way. But what did you make of his performance in that second half?
No, I thought he was really good. I know fans seem to get nervous whenever Jack Stephens comes on the pitch, but when you go back to the start of the season, how good he was with Salisu at the beginning, you know, and everyone was kind of up in arms when he was injured against Man City because he'd been brilliant up until that point. So I do think he is a very good defender. I mean, he's probably not a top 10 defender, but he's a good defender. And yeah, he came on. You'd think that, he's not played properly, probably at this intensity for a little while, so he's going to struggle. But he just sat right in, and I think that's probably the Salisu effect. Maybe I think because Salisu is just so good and is playing so well at the moment that Stephens automatically comes on. You can be confident knowing that you've got him beside you, who is only on one way, and that's going up at the moment. So I imagine that plays into it. But then he's also got Kyle Walker-Peters, again, excellent. And Perot, who's probably had his best week in the Southampton shirt. And we're going to get onto that Tottenham game in a minute. But the defence as a unit is playing very, very well. And Ralph has got, he wanted this 2 players for every position. So realistically, it should be quite seamless. If Bednarek goes out, Stephens come in, it should be a seamless transition. And that's exactly what it was in the second half at Old Trafford.
So before we get on to the Spurs game, let's have just a quick chat about our strongest 11, because it feels like we're almost getting there. James says, a great week to be a Saints fan. I feel the bigger squad and competition for places is finally helping Saints push on, as players know they can't rest on their laurels. And there's a few messages about Perot and Elyounoussi who have had good games. Elyounoussi seems to be grabbing his second chance with both hands. Do we feel that we know what our strongest 11 is now, finally?
I think we're getting there. I still think there'll be minor tweaks depending on the opposition at times. I think there are certain opponents where I think it just makes so much sense to go with 3 at the back and play wing backs. So as a result, that best 11 will change in order to accommodate certain changes. But yeah, I think realistically, every manager always wants to kind of have a good idea of what their best team is if they needed that sort of go-to 11. I mean, even Pep Guardiola I'm absolutely certain knows who, if he was playing Liverpool tomorrow, he knows exactly which 11 he would pick for that game, assuming everybody's fit and available. And I think we're pretty much there. I would suggest. I mean, I still think the partner for Salisu is still a little bit up in the air. But also, I mean, Kyle Walker-Peters and Perot, as you say, have kind of thrown a little bit of a spanner in the works as well, because now all of a sudden Tino Livramento doesn't automatically walk back into the team. I mean, how do you drop either of those at the moment? I don't see how you do. The only way Tino gets a game for me at the moment is either one of those two gets a knock in training or something in the next week or two, or maybe we do a little bit of rotation for the FA Cup game, which I mean I'm not overly keen on, because I think at the moment we've shown ourselves perfectly capable of competing with the best teams this year, and then in one-off games, I think that cup's an opportunity. Although the draw's not fallen particularly kindly with none of the big sides drawn against each other, but that can come next round.
Yeah,
it's interesting to see Kyle and Tino on the same side of the pitch, wasn't it? We were calling for that at the start of the season, but the other way around. So it was interesting to see, Walker-Peters pushed up the wing in the second half, and Ralph talking about. I thought it was a sort of like nice interview where he was talking about how good a player Walker-Peters is and capable of playing, virtually anywhere, which is a good thing. So it will. I mean, when he made that substitution, I kind of knew Elyounoussi was going to come off, and you're looking at the bench and thinking, is he going to bring Gineppo on to play that side? But he obviously thought, well, I'd prefer to bring Tino on and push push Walker Peters up the wing. So, and I'm, in hindsight, I'm much happier with that decision. So obviously that's a way that Tino will get minutes. But I think the important thing is that the way Walker Peters is playing, there's absolutely no need to rush Tino back into the side until he's 100% fit.
Yeah, is that kind of what we discussed a bit earlier on in the season, Dan, about the fact that it was just going to be a case of waiting to see if one of them was injured, and then they would really start to come into their own, because we were trying to force a way, if you like, of getting them both onto the pitch at the same time. And actually now we're kind of, looking at Kyle Walker-Peters can't be dropped, and then you've got Tino that can come in, and it just gives Ralph some more options, because he was talking about playing him as a number 10 for a bit, wasn't he?
Well, I think if you go back to the very first game of the season, no one would have had Kyle Walker-Peters out of the team. There was just no way. He didn't do anything to get dropped. He was one of the best players last season. And I think Tino is now in a similar position to Kyle. Kyle got back in the team. He wasn't handed a place back into the team. He got back into the team. Now, I would have been really disappointed if Tino had started at Old Trafford in place of Kyle, or probably Perot would have been the one that missed out, simply because he was so good against Tottenham. And everyone knows Ralph loves Tino. So you're kind of thinking, surely he's not going to do it. But then he probably would, because he loves Tino. And I think it was an important sign of his man management, actually, for me, and how that has developed. Because I think in recent months or recent seasons, he would have just made that change without thinking, well, what will that tell a player like Romain, who's just done really well, that I'm going to bomb him out with the first opportunity because this young lad's back. So yeah, it's a good sign that they're in that position, that they've got these fullbacks. But Kyle had never done anything wrong to get dropped. Kyle remains, for me, one of the club's best players. Tino's 18 years old. He's superb. He's clearly got so much potential, and he's going to be England's best right back probably in 3 or 4, maybe 5 years. But for now, he's just come back from quite a lengthy spell out. Don't rush him. You don't need to. You've got Kyle. He's doing just fine. And let Tino get back in the team. The way he gets back in the team is at Old Trafford, for example. He comes on in the last 30 minutes. Do something amazing in those 30 minutes. Create a goal, score a goal, whatever. And that gives Ralph something else to think about.
Jack says Perot is class and doesn't get enough praise. I'd rather have him at left back than KWP for the left foot crosses. And Ed saying Perot was an absolute bargain as well. I think we can all agree on that. Let's talk about the Tottenham game. Ralph said it was the best he'd seen the side play. He was just so. He
did wrote back on that in our press conference. He did, yeah. Because my boss said to me, he's just said that's the best game he's ever been in charge of, and then with the written media, he then said it's the best first half I've been in charge of. And I thought,
well, so did he quantify what the best game is, or did he leave us to guess?
No, just said that was the best first half performance he's seen from Southampton.
Steve, was it the best you've seen the side play under Ralph?
Oh Christ, there's a question.
City was good.
Yeah, I think in terms of actually taking it to a supposed big side. I mean, Spurs have got all kinds of problems at the moment, so everything's always got to be taken into context. But yeah, I think given our relatively low expectations of that game, knowing what our record is like against them, how we almost always find a weird and wonderful new way of losing against them. I think, yeah, the way we brushed off the fact that we gave them a goal start, and didn't let any of that bother us at all. And it didn't seem to even bother us the fact that we kept missing these gilt-edged chances either. I mean, without Lloris, if they had, I don't even know who Spurs' reserve keeper is these days, because Gazaniga's gone to Fulham, hasn't he? But whoever their reserve keeper is now, if he'd been forced to play that game on Wednesday, I mean, we would have been 4 or 5 up, because I think without that sort of psychological thing of, oh, it's Hugo Lloris I'm about to hit this ball at, I think Che Adams probably finds the corner. I think he's probably overthought that really early chance and basically done exactly what he did in that game last season, and hit him right in the midriff from about 2 yards. It's like, how have you managed to repeat that? Given that I'm sure that we almost certainly sat here last season sort of talking about that game and saying, well, he could have that chance 100 times and he wouldn't hit the keeper again. And next opportunity, he's done exactly the same. But yeah, it was that first half was, other than sort of probably the 5 minutes again either side of the Spurs goal, we were just relentless, and we just played right through Spurs midfield all the time. I mean, Højbjerg has basically turned into the player that we saw at the kind of
the one that gets sent out for the press conferences.
Yeah, the one that we were actually sort of turning and saying, well, fine, Spurs, you can have him. Give us money, no problem at all. And yeah, so him and Winks as a pair doesn't work, and I mean, Romeo and Ward-Prowse just tore them to pieces and gave us so much space in between the lines as well. And with the two wide forwards, where they were able to either come inside or go on the outside, not too worried about either, because Reguilon and Emerson Royale is just dreadful. But although saying that Matt Doherty wasn't any better today against his old side Wolves. So yeah, that's another problem position for them. But yeah, we just tore into them. It's like we've obviously looked at the tapes, seen where they're vulnerable, which is basically anywhere behind the front three, and said, right, we'll attack all of those, and we'll do it methodically and systematically, and they will not have an answer to it. And they didn't have an answer to it other than our poor finishing. And that was genuinely pretty much the only complaint I could have of our performance on Wednesday, I think.
John says Romeo was an unsung hero for the two games. Brilliant with and without the ball. A lot of love for Romeo in the comments tonight. It was a great game for the neutrals, but even better for us, Glenn. That was a hell of a game to watch.
Yeah, it really was. There were times in the game where you kind of thought, oh, here we go, the inevitable defeat to Spurs coming up. Obviously, when they scored the first goal, and it's an own goal again. Bednarek going for the golden boot of own goals this season. I don't know how many that is now. It's at least 2. But we talked a while ago about us not responding well to setbacks, and we were brilliant. We responded brilliantly, both when we went 1-0 down, when we went 2-1 down. You can't buy that sort of reaction. And I just from start to finish, frustrating when we got in at half time and it was still 1-1, because we had all, the ball was pinging around the Spurs goal at the end of the first half, couldn't score. Thought we might have missed the boat at half time because we've been on top and we've not scored or not gone ahead. Knew Spurs would improve, but I found it really interesting. I don't know if this is the Conte influence, the Italian thing, but once Spurs pushed up in the second half, got on top of us, and we weren't playing much football. Then they scored, which should have been disallowed, but we won't go into that because it was a while ago. And then they seemed to take a step back. I mean, part of that was us going, I can't believe we're losing this game. Right, let's get back on it. Yeah. But Spurs seemed to take a step back and almost like settle for 2-1, thought they'd done their job. And you talk about responding to setbacks. I mean, we got our second goal and Spurs responded to that by conceding exactly the same goal again. Unmarked player in the box. No one putting any pressure on Ward-Prowse when he crosses the ball. And it's just so funny. Walker Peters has got the ball. He just turns around. Oh, there's Ward-Prowse in acres of space. I'll just roll it back to him. And 2 crosses, 2 really good headers. Adams' header was brilliant. I loved Elianussi's goal simply because of the movement. That's something it's always bothered me in the last 3 or 4 years about Saints, with a lack of movement in the box, lack of movement ahead of the ball, and just the way he came in off the wing, just jogged into the space. Spurs aren't good enough defensively to go with him, and he totally got his reward for making that run. So loved the game, and the disallowed goal in the last minute was just perfect. As soon as that still came up, and you see, yes, he's offside, get in. It was Yeah.
Have you seen the video of the lad on Twitter that was filming himself?
Oh, yes.
For the.
Yeah, well,
I don't understand why people do this.
No, you're just setting yourself up for a fall. We'll have to share that.
But also,
those
you
sort of
don't
people
get.
should be in prison anyway.
But you don't get. I mean, anybody who's been to a game, any time, well, since mobile phones have been a thing, you do not get a signal in the ground. So he wasn't broadcasting live. So nobody has kind of picked up on this off of somebody else's social media and said, look at this idiot broadcasting. He thinks they've scored and now he's been made to look a mug. No, he's filmed himself. It's all happened. They've lost the game. They've been booed off. And he's gone home and he's actually put that together and edited it and uploaded it to social media. What goes through someone's mind?
It's his biggest tweet of the year. Dan Ross says, it's been great to see us not giving up, going a goal down and fighting to get back into the game the last couple of games. I think Wednesday kind of summed up the character of the side, didn't it? And it was a real demonstration of how far we've come recently.
Yeah, exactly, which Glen touched on at the beginning when he started talking about the Spurs game. But I think with the Spurs game, at no point did it ever really feel like they were never out. They were always on top. The Bednarek own goal was obviously unfortunate, and bar a mini kind of Tottenham renaissance where they scored, there was just nothing. Southampton just had so much success down that left side. I mean, Royale, he just looked way out of his depth. It was just time and time again they were getting so much success down that left side. I think even in the first half, I think Pro had a pop shot, didn't he, that hit the bar. That was it was just non-stop down that left-hand side, basically. And then kind of ironic that the two winners come from the other side of the pitch. But I think for me, what was most impressive about the Tottenham game was just how good Southampton were on the ball. They were just sublime on the. Tottenham basically said, you got to create the chances, and they did that. Tottenham were happy to kind of sit back, try and soak up the pressure, then hit them on the counter attack. And in games gone past, in certainly last season, Southampton would have struggled to find a way to break down Tottenham or to create chances to score. They didn't struggle at all on Wednesday night. There was just chance after chance after chance after chance, and I mean, two goals of exactly the same. I mean, that just shows you how poor Tottenham have become, because they're supposed to be this well-organised team with one of the best managers in the world, but they've let definitely the best set-piece taker, probably the best crosser of the ball in the Premier League, have more than enough space to pick his spot twice without thinking, well, maybe we won't do that again. They've just let him do it twice. And it's just, it's remarkable, really, when you think about it. This is a team that is supposed to be pushing for the Champions League, and they've watched the best set-piece taker, the best crosser of the ball in the Premier League, just twice, just cross the ball unchallenged into the box.
2 minutes, yeah.
Exactly the same mark both times. Yeah. And I think it was the Tottenham one just felt like a culmination of all the good work that had been done this season. For me, that's what it felt like. For me, it was the culmination of just brilliant business in the summer, getting rid of players that didn't want to be at the club, that were, stinking out the dressing room, replacing them with youth. Everyone hungry, everyone fighting to play, making sure they take their chances. And it was just a brilliant night. I think one of the better ones I think I've had covering the club was just how good Southampton were, and they absolutely bullied Tottenham off the pitch. And seeing Højbjerg get taken off early is just, you think that was a player that wanted to leave Southampton, that threw his toys out the pram and was not going to sign a new contract.
Got dropped today as well. He
dropped today. And I mean, don't want to labour on this point, but I texted a friend of mine earlier, did Southampton win the summer transfer window? When you think about it, £45 million for Vestergaard and Ings. It's just remarkable, and they both had a year left on their contracts. I mean, my guess is that Martin Semmens probably negotiated those deals. I mean, next time I buy a house, I'd happily he can be the estate agent for my place now. Because how the ability to, certainly with Vestergaard, just to pull Leicester's trousers down in front of them was just amazing.
Leicester were absolutely desperate, weren't they? Because
they were. But I mean, even to take advantage of that. But yeah, the Tottenham game was just the culmination of what had been a brilliant few weeks on the kind of biggest stage. in a fantastic stadium. It was just brilliant to watch, and Saints were absolutely excellent.
It was one of those games that I watched live and then watched it on Match of the Day again afterwards. It's like, wow.
I think I was awake until I stayed in London that night anyway because I had to be in the office for something else. But I was awake until like 2:30 buzzing. I'm not even a fan, and I was just like, this was just so good.
Oh, it's great. A couple of other things before we get on to the Everton preview. Going to talk about the goalkeeper and Fraser Forster's had a couple of really good games. Now we know that he's going to be out of contract at the end of the season, and we're looking to bring somebody in. Dean says absolutely loving his time management. I picked up on that a couple of times actually. I think he's very good at that, isn't he? Just running the clock down.
There's nothing better than watching a goalkeeper pick up the ball and lay down on the floor. That's one of the best things, I think.
Or walk around the back of the goal to take the goal kick from the other side. That's always a good one that he does. But Steve James says, do you think there's any chance we might look at keeping him? Does his performance this last couple of games change the whole fact that he's on a huge amount of money and he's obviously not or hasn't been the first choice keeper?
It's a difficult one, isn't it? And I think it's everything is complicated by the fact that the club had very clearly made a decision back earlier this season that Alex McCarthy was the guy we were going to put the money behind.
Yeah.
Now, in hindsight, that looks a terrible decision. Well, maybe not terrible, but less than optimal decision, shall we say? Given that McCarthy's performances before he got injured were a bit ropey. But at the end of the day, we also know that Forster's capable of having those down moments as well. But I think my opinion on the two keepers has always been that I think McCarthy will always give you a very steady base level. He doesn't really fluctuate up or down an awful lot from that base level. Forster, I think, has a much higher ceiling, but also probably a lower floor. So it's a case of where do you kind of want to stick your eggs in that particular basket? I kind of have a gut feel that we're still looking for somebody else. Dan maybe either confirm or deny, but the Sam Johnston situation doesn't seem to be going away. He's obviously out of contract in the summer, so the problem there is, again, as you mentioned at the start of this, is wages. We know that Forster's one of our highest paid players. We don't know for sure, but it sounds possible that McCarthy might be up there now as well. Which you're not going to keep both of them on silly numbers. I would think unless we're somehow able to, if we've decided, actually we've screwed up here. Unless we're able to find some sort of solution which sees McCarthy leave, I don't see how we can possibly justify giving Forster a new contract now, unfortunately.
What would you like to see happen, Glenn? What's the ideal scenario for you?
Well, I think Steve summed it up very well. If we have indeed sort of made McCarthy on the same sort of wages that Forster is on, can we keep both of them? Probably not. Can we bring in someone else to be first choice, like a Sam Johnston or a Dean Henderson? You do sort of wonder, can you justify doing that? I know Dan's commented on this before. I find it dead weird that if they've given McCarthy a new contract, why haven't they announced it? I find that very strange. I see no possible advantage of keeping it a secret. It's a strange one. Fraser is certainly playing well enough at the moment. If you just forget the contract situation for the moment, you don't really want any member of your current first 11 to be leaving out of contract at the end of the season, because you've got to make a decision. You've got to bring in someone who's going to be better. Otherwise your team is going to be weaker next season, which is obviously not what you want.
Do you think the door's still open, Dan, or not? Do you think it's a done deal now? He's off.
I think, to kind of go about this in a long way, go back to this time last year, and everyone was in the same situation. Alex had been out, Fraser had come in and was doing very well, and then there was a clamour that Fraser's the number one. He has to be our number one. Over the summer, Ralph has obviously seen something in Alex and Fraser and whatever, and at the start of the season, he decided to go with Alex. They've given them the contract and so on. And then we're in exactly the same position now. Alex is out injured, and he actually had COVID last time. He wasn't injured. But Alex is injured now. Fraser's come in, and all of a sudden it's, God, this, Fraser's our number one. He has to play. He has to play. For me, the club made that decision. I don't think they should back out of it now. I think you just have to, get on with it. And let's be realistic. Why is Fraser Forster still at Southampton Football Club? Because of the money he's on. No one else could buy him. No one else wanted to buy him. He would not be at Southampton if a club were going to come in and offer to buy him and take his wages. It would just that's why he is still at Southampton with a year left, with however many months left on 4 months left on his contract. Is because no one else would come in and pay him the money Southampton are. Now, the situation they're in, if they want to go down the route of keeping Fraser Forster, which for me makes no sense whatsoever, because what they should be doing is thinking, right, okay, who can we get that's good, that's young, that in a year, in 2 years, will really be pushing Alex McCarthy, so that when his contract ends, or even before his contract ends, there's another young one that's, I don't know, 25, 26, whatever age, but younger than the two there now. That's what they should be looking to do. If I'd be shocked. I don't think they will. You can never say never, but I'd be shocked if they gave Forster a new deal. I don't think it makes any sense. There was a time, they were paying their two goalkeepers an obscene amount of money, and they'd be back to square one if they decide to keep both of them. It just doesn't make sense, but I'm not paid to make those decisions. So.
The other thing I just wanted to get your opinion on, Dan, was this stuff about Ralph considering retirement in 2024. I know you've written about that. Where did this come from? This was an interview he'd done. It wasn't with the English press, was it? It was an interview he'd done with, was it the Austrian press or German press?
It was Kicker, German, yeah. So Ralph's two kind of outlets of choice are Bild and Kicker, both in Germany. And the whole retiring thing is something he has said before. And yeah, he's basically just said, when it gets to the end of my contract, I will consider retiring. Do I think he actually will consider retiring? Well, it's interesting because now he's said it, makes it a bit more real. There's a bit of pressure there that he's put on himself to kind of walk away. Although I'm sure in 2 years, no one will particularly remember it if he's still on a massive upward curve and everyone's loving him. But then at the same time, when you get to know him a bit, he is just 24/7 intense. You think there's no way that guy could be sat at home at 57 years old watching games of football on the weekend and not being involved. He just lives it, breathes it. I mean, I remember him saying that it was a nightmare when he had COVID and he missed one of the games.
Oh, that's right. Yes, he had to watch it from his flat, didn't he?
Yeah. I mean, he was probably like a caged up animal inside his flat because he couldn't impact the game or any kind of influence. So I was not necessarily surprised because he said it before, but I think it's one of them. I'll believe it when I see it, that if he actually walks away, then fair play and kind of good luck. But right now, I'd be shocked if he did.
And 2 years is a long time in football anyway, isn't it?
Indeed.
So, right.
And he might get sacked before then. So.
That's the thing that I also read this week. Yeah, you never know. 18 months' time, who knows? Everton at St Mary's on Saturday. New manager, new signings, 3 goals at the weekend. What have you made of them recently, Steve? Bit of a different side than at the start of the season.
Yeah, although they've also been beaten 3-1 at Newcastle. So I'll kind of temper Saturday's 3-0 win against Leeds with that. I mean, Lampard will improve their attacking output, but as we've seen with both his Derby team and his Chelsea team, eventually any semblance of defensive organisation that they had will be eroded over the period that he's there. And by the sound of it, they've got quite a few defensive injuries. I think Yerry Mina's out for a while now.
That's probably a good thing for them.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I mean, he kind of seems from what I've read, he seems to be the one that the fans think is kind of the one that kind of holds it all together. Not that he's necessarily their best defender, but he's kind of got the organisational capability. He's got the sort of clout in the dressing room, having played for Barcelona and things like that. And he's quite a good sort of leader. Whereas now you're left with, I mean, who have they got? Michael Keane and
Holgate.
Holgate, who, I mean, they're all right, but I'm not sure those two are getting our side now, and we're not great. We're still not great defensively. So yeah, I think their defence is certainly there to be got at. If they try and play in an attacking way that they did against Leeds, and we're on our game in the way that we've been the last couple of weeks, then we'll win very comfortably, and we'll just pick them off. If Lampard is a little bit more pragmatic, a little bit more sensible, and whether the players will actually buy into this sort of system, given that that's what kind of seemed to screw Benitez over, is that the players didn't seem to want to play a defensive-minded system, then we might have some more issues, because I mean, we don't. While kind of in the last few weeks we've been playing well against teams who have been quite happy to try and attack us. We've not yet in this run been tested against a team that is happy to sit back and just soak up pressure and frustrate us. Even Wolves kind of gave it a go in parts before they went 1-0 up. So that was quite an open game. Whereas I think if Everton were to play defensively, I mean, I don't know whether they're good enough to do that. Quite honestly, I don't know whether Lampard is capable of setting a team up to play that way. Certainly from what we've seen of his previous managerial stints, he's probably not. So if they go all guns blazing, then I mean, yeah, sure, Richarlison's probably going to get a hat trick, but we're going to stick a few past them as well.
It's going to be a great atmosphere at St Mary's, Glen. Expectations are going to be high. Is that where we could possibly come undone? We go into it thinking, as fans, this would be, a good game, and we ought to get a decent home win here. I know the team won't prepare that way, but
well, if you're a Saints fan and you have been for a while, if you go into a game expecting to win, then you're an idiot. Basically, we all think we might win 1-0, but we don't really believe it. You're only ever one game away from a disaster. We could get beat 3-0 by Everton. It's just as likely as us winning. But I agree with what Steve said. Everton are going to play in a more attacking, open way, and that's going to suit us. I mean, since Lampard's been there, they've had 2 wins at home against Brentford and Leeds, who are both poor sides, and the away game they got stuffed up at Newcastle. So
who are also a poor side.
Who are a poor side. And this is at our ground. So we're the best side that they've played since Lampard's come in. It will be interesting to see how he sets up. I mean, Everton have got individual players that have hurt us in the past, like Richarlison and Calvert-Lewin, though Calvert-Lewin doesn't seem to be either fully fit or in favour at the moment. They've got this winger, Anthony Gordon, who seems to have been doing relatively well. So they will pose an attacking threat. But yeah, I mean, in theory, it should be a relatively high-scoring game, because they're going to try and attack, and that's going to leave the door open for us at the other end. I found, yeah, I mean, you talk about the transfer business they've done. I mean, they've signed, players at in the transfer window that all sort of play the number 10 position, and you think the reason Everton are near the bottom of the league was nothing to do with the number 10 position. It's because their defenders weren't very good, and Jordan Pickford's not particularly having a great time. So it'd be interesting to see what Everton put up out on the pitch and how they set up. Are they going to go with sort of like 5 attacking players who are not really interested in defending? If so, I'm quite happy.
Well, Mark reckons a nice 2-1 win. Elyounoussi maybe taking the 60-minute injury for the extra bonus points. I like that, actually. Which player goes down to get the drinks break around 60 minutes? So Mark's going for 2-1. Dan, how do you see this one playing out?
It's a score prediction.
Yeah, go for your score prediction.
I'm going to go for a 2-0 Southampton win. 2-0.
Steve, score prediction from yourself?
Well, we've not kept a clean sheet for ages now.
Fair point.
Yeah, so get your money on both teams to score. 3-2, I reckon.
Glenn, you mentioned there might be goals. What are you saying?
Yeah, I was going to say 3-2 as well, but I'll go for a wildly entertaining 4-2 win.
I've got to be honest, I didn't check back
isn't it?
I didn't check back the predictions from last week. I'm just assuming that nobody got them right. I don't know. Did anyone say we were going to beat Spurs 3-2?
No, but
I think I went for a draw at Old Trafford.
Right? I think
Right.
I
said
went for a draw at Old Trafford, so you're
I
going to have
said
to
we
check.
beat United.
We'll check the tape.
Yeah.
We'll check the tape.
I mean, how's the league table looking for that? I mean, you obviously haven't got it now, and I've just thrown
Terrible.
you under a bus. So for next week, maybe we can have an update.
You want the predictions league table for next week?
Yeah, not the fantasy football one. That's not important. The other one.
We can do that for you, I'm sure. Nice one. Right, thanks, chaps. Before we go, a big shout out to our loyal and much loved patrons. In our Matt Letizia tier, we've got Colt Baker, Dave Ernsberger, Ed Busy. Thanks for your comments tonight, Ed, and Phil Cook as well. And in the Francis Bernardi tier, we've got Nick Reed and Matt Hall. To find out more about becoming a TSP patron and all the benefits that come with that, you can check out the website. Thanks to Dan, thanks to Steve, thanks to Glenn. Don't forget to follow this podcast wherever you're listening on the socials. It's at Total Saints Pod. That's where you'll find us on Twitter and Facebook. And you can always drop us an email via the website. Thanks for listening. Stay safe and well, and we'll see you next week.